Candidates ready for the fight. Voices loud, they take the stand. Who will lead this promised land? Promise is flying, hearts ignite. Truth and lies will take the mic. The clock is ticking, make your choice. Who you hear, the people's voice. It's in the ballot, it's in your hand. The future's calling, take a stand. One vote, one dream, one destiny. Who will wear the crown in 2025? We'll see. Words are weapons wielded, strong debates get heated. Right or wrong, they paint the town with visions bold. Who will rise, who will fold? Shadows linger, truth will spin. The battle rages from within. One by one they state their case, but only one can win this race. Who will lead this, win this race? It's in the ballot, it's in your hand. The future's calling, take a stand. One vote, one dream, one destiny. Who will wear the crown in 2025? We'll see. We'll see. Promises flying, hearts ignite. Truth and lies both take a mic. The clock is ticking, make your choice. Will you hear the people's voice? It's in the ballot, it's in your hand. The future's calling, take a stand. One vote, one dream, one destiny. Who will wear the crown in 2025? We'll see. Words are weapons wielded, strong debates get heated. Right or wrong, they paint the town with visions bold. Who will rise, who will fold? Shadows linger, truth will spin. The battle rages from within. One by one they state their case, but only one can win this race. Who will lead this, win this race? It's in the ballot, it's in your hand.
Okay, and welcome to tonight's In the Ballot show for the Bay of Plenty, the Western Bay of Plenty Regional Council constituency for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. God, that's a tongue twister and a lot of bays in there. We've got Neil Parker, who is joining us, who's the only candidate who has made himself, who has decided to put his feet to the It's in the Ballot fire. How's the good old Bay of Plenty going?
Well, it's been a bit of a rubbishy weather day today, to be honest, Sam. So the marketing department for BOP Tourism is probably not best left in my hands today.
Oh, fair enough. I didn't have a bad drive when I was driving over the climbers on the way to the way to Hamilton. It wasn't too bad when I was going down the hill, but maybe I caught a good spell at about midday.
Yeah, well, it was actually good then, and then it sort of went a bit downhill later on. Yeah. I mean, It wasn't a bad day, but, in BOP, we expect perfect weather, Sam. This is the Bay of Plenty where it should be perfect at all times.
Yeah. Don't put your was it campaign line on it, because you might be asked by Roger Douglas to resign.
Yeah, well, that's it too.
I don't think he has expertise in meteorology. His expertise more has been the former Minister of Finance, but he has been making the rounds within the last 24 hours. So yeah. Might have to be careful what you put on the line. Okay, so shall we, and sorry for our audience that we're half an hour late. We had a bit of technical issues trying to connect Neil in Google Chrome, decided to throw all the roadblocks in the way of getting the microphone to work. Is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah, or you could just say that Neil's probably only incompetent on his phone. That might be the easier answer.
I like the honesty. So one thing, if elected to council, you will get yourself a nice flash laptop?
Well, probably not, to be honest. I think I will actually attend, physically most of the time, and then my standard PC is actually a good bit of gear. So by physically attending, using the good old PC, and now that we've got the phone cooperating a bit better, well, we're probably all right.
Oh, that sounds good. Okay, so we will ask 10 box questions and the 3 hard-hitting questions. You'd say that's a good, fair, rough...
Yep, you go for your life. Do what you will. That's what I say.
Okay, so we'll get the first box number, which is D for Delta. How will you work with tangata whenua and local hapu to ensure Te Tiriti partnership is reflected in decision-making at council?
Gosh, that sounds like one of the hard-hitting questions right off the bat.
Oh, I haven't even got to that point yet.
Exactly. Well, basically, the way I view it is that the job of the regional council and all councils, but certainly the regional council, because it is indeed regional, You've got to represent all ratepayers, which means you've got to listen to everybody that's there. And that, of course, includes the tangata whenua and the various hapu. So they, will have their opportunity for input, just as will everybody else, and it will be listened to.
Okay, let's get to the next question. We've got B for Bravo. How will you stand up for your community, and if it's for your community interests, if it differs from your own position?
Well, at the end of the day, you are there to represent the community. You can give your own view, but it's the community that elects you, so you've got to be representing their views.
Okay, so we've got the next one. We've got I for India. How can the council contribute to civil defence and emergency management in our area?
Right, well, that does fall with the regional council. So their main contribution, I would say, is to make sure that they are regularly drilled, as it were, in their procedures to know that it's going to work when it's needed, because by the nature of that situation, it tends to pop up with very little warning. So they just simply, like the Boy Scouts, they've got to be prepared.
Oh, yes, those civil defence emergencies usually come in with very little warning.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, we got E for the East Coast Main Trunk Line. Many residents feel disconnected from regional council decision making. How will you ensure communities across Katikati, Waiheke Beach, Te Puke and rural areas are generally heard and represented?
Right. I think we actually need to be making a lot more use of technology. We've got the ability now to get people put in remotely, email, Zoom, and of course the various other platforms such as the one we're using right now. And it just seems to me that we need to make a lot more use of that. I sort of have in mind the idea that I see no reason why the residents and ratepayers couldn't receive a quarterly survey that just said, here's some things we've been thinking about. Give us your opinion. What are the things you're thinking about? And then simply release the results of those surveys to the community on a regular basis, all electronically. It's not going to cost, there's no significant cost to it. And I just think it needs to be used far more, because at present, all that seems to happen is we get our rates bill and there's a wonderful spiel about all the magnificent things the council is supposedly doing for you. But that's not, that's not consultation. That's just telling you, hey, we're wonderful people and this is how we spend your money.
I can tell you, Wellington City Council already does it, and they have they don't have a big response rates to them. So
is that right?
Yeah, so that's something in there. So the ones they send off to the Residents Association. So as part of my role as being I'm the treasurer. I'm not the secretary of the Newtown Residents Association, but the ones that go to the Residents Associations tend to get better results than the ones that actually go direct to the residents.
Right.
So that's something
well, I think I think it's fair to say though that the residents' associations represent the motivated people. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
And,
yes.
and that's why they're in the residents' association, and so that they're already an audience that is primed to take interest because they've already shown that level of motivation. And I was out last night at the Kaimai ratepayer group talking to them, and that's exactly what I was saying to them. I said, I'm more than happy talking to those groups because you're dealing with a motivated audience that actually is interested and wants to know.
Correct, yeah. Okay, so we got the next one. We got X for X-ray. As a councillor, how would you work collaboratively with your fellow councillors to deliver on your promises?
Right. Well, the first thing, of course, is to be careful what promises you make. Because at the end of the day, you've always got to remember you're only one voice out of 14 round the table. But what I do, I think most people would accept that I'm pretty plain spoken. They'll have no difficulty knowing the point that I'm trying to get across. And so providing I've made that point clearly, well, then I'm at least putting it out there. Hey, here's where I'm coming from. And then, of course, I'm hoping that we'd have a robust debate and come to a sensible conclusion. Of course, it's going to go my way, but I will have at least that they won't die wondering what I was saying. They will know.
I just hope you don't end up being the person who has a whole heap of TikToks of your opinions done by some young person.
Well, it's possible, but blame them and not me, because it won't be me putting them on TikTok, I can tell you.
Okay, we've got Z for Zulu. What would success look like at the end of your term on council?
Right. What my definition of success would be if I had seen a vast reduction in total spend, or conversely, if the spend stayed the same, a vast improvement in the actual level of service provided. And of course, that has to be determined by the ratepayer. In other words, the ratepayers need to confirm that they can see material changes in the level of service. But yeah, in my ideal world, I think there's room for a lot of cost cutting, and basically just through efficiencies, not through cutting the service itself, but just getting some efficiencies. It's a big bureaucracy. There's over 600 folk on the payroll there, or around that number. It certainly costs $60 million, put it that way. And our empty yellow buses that love to drive around the city, we burn up a minimum of 50 million on those. So straight away, there's 110 million, which is half the budget already, where I can see that there's got to be huge room for efficiency gains there.
So that's what
my idea of success will be. My idea of success will be when I can show them at the end and say, hey, look, we're either doing the same job with a whole lot less people and a whole lot less cost all round, or we've materially improved those services that we are currently offering.
Well, there is some good news. The bus contract does come up for renewal in the next term, and I do know when speaking with Stuart Crosby, they have removed the piece of legislation that required 40-seater buses as the default.
Excellent, because I did query them that on ages ago. I said, what on earth were they thinking? And I was told by one of the regional councils then, they said we had no choice in it. And so that ties in with exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, the original Piton model was quite restrictive on what it could do. And I mean, one of the annoying things about it was it had block contract pricing. So you had to sell your bus rocks in blocks and all that. Previously, under the old model, you used to be able to have a contract for each bus route, and then they blocked it. I know the Wellington one more than what I know in Bay of Plenty Regional Council, but one of the things that were in there was legislation set a certain bus size was deemed minimum for public transport, which, I mean, if you have a bus in there, you've got to make sure you can fit at least a wheelchair in there. And I've got to say that in the house I'm currently in, because if I don't say that, it's blasphemy, because Tony himself is in one. But it's the other, so that was one of the things there. And I wonder at the time, maybe the standard size was a 40-seater bus. Which
certainly it needs looking at, because they're absolutely famous for being empty up here,
Yeah, and also like the other one is they need to sort out the road users, because currently buses fit into two categories: below 18 ton, above 18 ton. So whether you're running a 8-ton 20-seater bus or a 55-seater Scania that's just below 18 ton, you pay the same amount of road users. So we might need to speak to Chris Bishop, the Minister of Transport, to see if there can be some changes made on the amount of road user charges that the buses pay into the land transport budget as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, here they've done a bit of fiddling with the what they call an on-demand service. So you've basically got a van that you phone up and it comes and gets you, and they claim to be getting some reasonable result with that. And it just occurs to me as we're speaking that that's probably the better way to deal with the wheelchair users, right?
Yeah.
That they get to use the on-demand thing, and that way you can then use a relatively standard sort of van to deal with the other people. And then once we can prove we can fill those vans, then we can start slowly moving up the size of vehicle. But to go straight out with a 40-seater right off was just madness, absolute madness. And we've been doing it for about 20 years and it hasn't changed. Honestly, there's just nobody on them.
Yeah, well, you can barely get a seat at certain times of days. But and they're running similar. Actually, the bus company that's up in Bay of Plenty is the same bus company that has 30% of Wellington's bus network.
Yes, I've seen it firsthand in Wellington, and it actually works fine down there. Public transport in Wellington actually is something that works. I think you've just got that combination of the geography and population density that it does work, and it's working well. But the mistake the good folk in Wellington might make is thinking that that's just going to work just as well throughout the country, and it just doesn't.
Which isn't the case at all. But you got a lot of our old buses. So some of the ones that still had the decent shelf life left in their buses got shifted to Tauranga from Wellington. So,
Right.
yeah, so you may have got the single door diesel and buses. They were, because Wellington banned single door buses, so you had to have dual door buses, which used to be on the eastbourne bus route. But the reason why they were on the eastbourne bus route was because it went down the motorway. And then when the Greater Wellington Regional Council said you have to have two doors for loading, all the single door diesel buses became non-compliant for Wellington ones. But so they got all sent to Tauranga because the NZ Bus got the contract for Tauranga.
Right. Yeah. Well, the buses themselves, there's nothing wrong with them except they're just too big for our current demand. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll move on from buses. We got in for November.
Yeah.
Many residents feel disconnected from council decision makings. How will you work alongside iwi and hapu to ensure Te Tiriti or Waitangi principles are embedded in regional council decisions affecting the Western Bays?
Right. Well, I think actually that a good thing to do would be to talk to those good folk in the iwi, because it occurs to me that essentially the services the regional council should be involved with strikes me that they should be pretty well evenly applicable to everybody. The environmental management requirements for the general population versus iwi ought not to be in any conflict that I can see. So it would be worth just chatting with the iwi folk to see that we are indeed correct in that assumption. But it strikes me that everyone is actually going to be aiming for the same sort of standard of environmental stewardship, which is the prime job of the regional council.
Okay, and the next one we've got is G for golf. How will you support economic growth in farming, horticulture and tourism while ensuring sustainable land use and preventing urban sprawl onto productive land?
Yes, well, now that's a very good one to bring up, because New Zealand as a whole, I think, has been definitely guilty of this whole urban sprawl. All our main centres have been put on what is pretty productive land. And, I don't believe we can take what I would call the Australian and American approach of just spreading willy-nilly, because those areas, those countries have huge land mass and often not very productive land, and so there's no cost to them in doing that. But New Zealand's not in that boat, and I believe that we need to be taking a leaf much more out of the UK book that recognises, hey, land's in short supply, we need to preserve its productive capacity, so we're going to have much more of a green belt type zoning kind of system in place, I believe. And that might sound unpalatable to New Zealanders, but I think it's the only realistic thing. And the side benefit of that is it does make your infrastructural costs much better, and indeed your public transport will start to work because you get that population density.
Oh, yeah, that's a very good point. One that really does frustrate me is the new housing development done on the nice fertile soil of the Bombays.
Yeah. Oh, there's thousands of hectares of Auckland and Hamilton, and indeed here, all top class land, and it's not available for food production anymore, and that just seems very short-sighted to me.
Yeah, Levin's got a big dilemma at the moment of another part of the country, is that a lot of these families have, you've had a lot of it is Chinese market gardeners, that they've gone into it, but the next generation, the kids don't want anything to do with it, and their big difficulty is how to sell it or find someone else to take it on. And often it's the developer offering them big sums of money to turn it into housing.
Yes, correct. That's what will happen. That's what will happen unless something is put in place to actually prevent that. And as I said, I just think you've really got to have that, finite belt around your city, exactly as the UK does. I think that's the only realistic option, because otherwise the developers will always be the guys that will be prepared to pay the most for your chunk of land. That's always going to be the case.
Yeah. Oh, well, we've got another question here. We've got J for Juliet. The Western Bays is one of the fastest growing areas in New Zealand. How will you ensure transport, water and wastewater infrastructure keeps pace with growth while keeping costs fair for ratepayers? Well, from a regional council perspective.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased to put that piece on the end because you're really getting into the domain of the district council there. But from the regional council's perspective, their major concern is really dealing with the water that is not in a pipe. Okay, so if the water is, we're talking waterways of all description that aren't piped, that's the primary concern on the water side for regional council. And then, of course, the erosion control from the actual land point of view, and pollutants, pollutants entering the waterways, and the erosion from the land silting up the harbour, etc. So that whole growth thing, from a regional council point of view, I think their main role is really just monitoring for compliance with those environmental measures. The district council has the heavy lifting to do in terms of keeping that growth manageable for their resources. And I think at the end of the day, what the council needs to be doing is saying, hey, look, everyone wants to move to Tauranga. We can't possibly accommodate them all as fast as they would like to come in. We have to stay in control. And that means as the council has built the infrastructure, they can then allow the people through the gate. But you can't allow the people through the gate and then say, oh, gee, we better find some infrastructure. That just, a recipe for disaster, which is about what we've been doing.
You summed up what happened on the Kapiti Coast while we did not have enough water to supply the residents for their houses, including got to the point literally they had a brand new housing subdivision built while they were at the time didn't have the ability to supply water for the current residents, but the building permits kept being issued.
Yeah, and to me, that's real cart before the horse material. It should be, hey, look, we know we've got the infrastructure ready, set to go. You developers pay your development levies. That funds that infrastructure to then actually go in, and we're in business. But to actually let a development occur without knowing how you're actually going to provide that infrastructure, that's just, crazy stuff.
Yeah. Okay, we've got one more question. We've got R for Romeo. What is your plan for protecting native bush, wetlands and biodiversity in the constituency, and how will you involve community groups in this mahi?
Right. Well, up here, I can't speak for the rest of the country, but the community seem to be fairly active on conservation efforts. So up here we have a thing called the Otaniwanuku Kiwi Trust, which I was a volunteer for. And that manages about 1,200 hectares of bushland up here that they're reintroducing kiwi and kakako to. So, and they seem to have a reasonable supply of volunteers that are happy to step up and do that work. And then at the other end, at the Katikati end, we've got the same thing going on with the Ongateti Forest Park, which essentially is doing the same sort of a thing. So there seems to be good community buy-in to that kind of effort. And I think all we've got to do is just keep on making that attractive for the community to participate by not bogging them down in red tape unnecessarily. Don't stand in their way, essentially, but they're all good community will to do it. And then additional to that, you've also got you'll have undoubtedly the QE2 covenant schemes. So that is stuff tends to happen on private. And that's been pretty successful throughout the country. And so that makes a contribution as well. So I think between those things, we've actually got that base pretty well covered.
Okay, so now let's get for our hard-hitting questions. Looking ahead, what is the single biggest opportunity you see the way that was worded is probably not the best one. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and how will you ensure the district takes advantage of it? It's amazing what happens when you got Western Bay and Bay of Plenty all mixed together, how the words get slightly overlapping each other.
Yeah. Well, they're obviously both relevant to both councils, so it's a question that applies to both. But for the regional council, I think their main opportunity is to make sure that they are preserving that productive capacity in the land. as we sort of spoke before, and that's by two ways: by looking after making sure that sound stewardship is applying on the land that's actually in production, and then B, having a good word in the ear of Western Bay District Council saying, hey guys, we really can't go expanding willy-nilly all over it and killing the goose that lays the golden eggs, because the BOP, as indeed does the rest of New Zealand, relies on its productive land. That's what makes the wheels spin for the economy. So you can't, that's your number one resource that you've really got to be careful with.
Yeah. Okay, hard-hitting question number 2. What are the top 3 priorities for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council?
Right. Getting back to basics, sticking to their absolute core areas, not getting involved in side issues. And the reason I say that is, once you start getting away from your core, you then, if you get into the side issues, you then start to need more staff, because you're trying to cover too many bases, and you shouldn't have been in those bases in the first place. So that's the first thing. And so what will go hand in hand with that is that will put a lid on the ever expanding staff numbers. As I alluded to before, we've got a huge headcount, and so if we can get those things right, that's going to do wonders for the budget. That's going to really help the budget along a lot. And I just want to make sure that we keep a strong discipline in that regard. The other thing that's really important for the BOP Regional Council is they've got to keep good relationships with the landowners, because the landowners, you've got to get their cooperation if you want to have good environmental outcomes.
Yeah. Okay, and probably one of the most important ones for elections this year. What is your position on retaining Western Bay of Plenty's District Council's Whakakaiuru District-wide Māori Ward and the Bay of Plenty Regional Council's Māori Constituency, and why do you hold that position?
Right. At first blush, I'd sort of say it's unnecessary, but really, at the end of the day, it's not actually critical, because you've still got one person, one vote, and whether that comes through the Maori ward or whether it's come through the general, it doesn't actually matter. You've still got the one person, one vote, and that's actually the important part. So to me, it's probably blown up to be a bigger issue than what it really is. It's not important in the scheme of things, providing you've got everyone having one person and one vote. Whether it comes through a Maori constituency or the general really doesn't matter too much.
Perfect. And would you like to finish off with a closing statement of why you should be receiving one of those ticks this election?
Yeah, sure. I think that, the responsibilities of the Regional Council are around land and waterways management, because I've spent my entire life farming the Bay of Plenty, from Te Puna in the west right through to Edgecombe in the east, and around Te Puke, and currently at Oropi. Also, we had land up in the Lower Kaimai at Omanawa. I've just been involved with every land type that's on offer in the Bay of Plenty through my entire life, and I think it puts me in a good position to understand those land and water management issues. And because I've got a few years under the belt, I've also had a lot of time on various committees and boards, some commercial, some community. So I just think the combination of those things means I'm well placed to make a useful contribution in the Regional Council.
Okay. Well, thank you for making the fun part of this evening come together. It's been an interesting way of doing it, but we made it work. We
did. And sorry that we had technical issues at my end, but we got there in the end.
Exactly, yeah, and worked out with as I call it, fantastic candidate, I believe, that the Western Bay of Plenty have to choose from.
Thank you kindly, Sam.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for joining us. And for those who are watching, we'll be back tomorrow with more It's in the Ballot. And Neil, you might want to stay for post-show talks. As always.
Right. I thought you were going to invite me for post-show drinks there for a minute. I thought, how are we going to do that over the technology? Eh?
We say what we like to drink and we go to our own fridges and grab it.
Right, yeah, I think that might be it.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll sit there in the stream, then we'll get on to that.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Good as gold.